Gamers, gals, non-binary pals, it's time to watch your favorite PowerPoint presenter. And I'm not talking about Smarter with Stevie. We do have that video in the works though, so stay tuned. It's coming out. We've got everybody's favorite white boy, yugioh. The format is too wide. I personally love wide formats. Wide formats are the fucking bee's knees of what I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! I love being able to show up to locals and not have every experience be the same. I love not having to play against fucking 4 Rescue Ace players. Shit was fucking demented. Well, I mean, it's gonna be more demented because, you know, Bonfire, but anyways, yugioh has some very choice things to say. Let's give it a watch and prepare for just full hater Stevie to come out.
How's it going, YouTube? Today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be the wide formats that we're getting. Another video. How's it going, YouTube? Today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be the wide formats that we're getting lately are just awful to play in, and I'm gonna tell you why.
They're not.
We're gonna be going off
They're awesome.
A lot of my own opinions about what is going on in the game currently. We're talking a lot about the kind of back and forth between if it's good, if it's bad, and just trying to stay as objective as possible, but also just telling you how I feel about it. If you haven't checked my sponsors over at Imperium Duelist, Dragon Shield, J fair tiers, definitely go ahead and check them all out down below in the description. This was the most fair tier 0 format we've ever had, and I know a lot of people are already just beside themselves with this point, but I do want to talk about why I think this is.
I'm just gonna say right now, there is no such thing as a fair tier 0 format. I'm just telling you that shit right fucking now. Because if you're in a tier 0 format, you are already in an inherently unfair competitive environment. You could say like, oh well, this was technically beatable. You know what's also technically beatable? Literally anything. These is an example I could give of like tier 0 that's technically beatable is like Jarvan the 4th on release of Spear of Shojin and Gore Drinker. If you guys were around for like those 2 weeks of League where just everyone with either Jarvan or like Xin Zhao, because Gore Drinker and Spear of Shojin got buffed and Jarvan got basically 1,000 free gold and gold efficiency if he built those items. Like, as long as your team didn't fucking feed 3 lanes, you could not lose. But like, yeah, technically if your teammates did feed, you could technically lose the game, even if you were going Jarvan. And that's kind of like the same how I'm looking at like Tearlament. If you bricked or you just milled badly, then sure, Tearlament was technically beatable, or you just opened the fucking hard nuts, you know what I mean?
It's gonna tie in with the fact that these were awful to play against. So, when we played against Goki and we played against Pepe, if you went second into these decks, you auto lost.
Do you know what you also auto lost to going second if you weren't playing tier? Also fucking Tearlament!
Not have half the outs that we do today to these decks. So if these decks just went unchecked and they just like went ahead and did their whole turn, you were losing your hand, you weren't playing the game. There's so many things that just were so wrong with these formats. You went up against these super crazy decks, and we didn't have Nibiru. Like, we didn't have anything at the time.
Implying Nibiru was good against tier.
Pretty interesting. So, definitely some pretty overpowered decks for what they were. When we talk about the most fair, I want to just say that fair does not always equal balanced, and that's a shout out to my Discord mod and friend, Squid.
Discord
I
moderator.
brought that up in conversation, and I do agree that there's got to be some check at some point to where you can't just get outskilled, I guess, if you want to call that, by your opponent just milling 10, right? And that's totally understandable. But this is through a scope of tier. Even if you go second into the matchup, you still had a way to play, and you have so many options to go ahead and beat this deck. You also had the addition of 9 Bisuls at the time that you could main deck that people were doing to go ahead and stop this deck.
Okay, first of all, just because Bisteals existed did not automatically imply that the Bisteals would automatically win you the fucking game. Like, first of all, you had to fucking draw them. Second of all, you had to not lose the dice roll. Just saying, yeah, they existed doesn't automatically mean that you're just gonna automatically find them. Man is literally saying just draw the out, Lamau. Like, yes, more tools exist now to be extremely strong and pushed decks, like the Bistules, like Nibiru, like Dark Rule, like Droplet. We have a bunch of cards now that exist in order to beat these specific decks. But that doesn't automatically entail that just because decks are playing these cards, that these decks automatically become way more fair or beatable, because if that's what it meant, then Tearlament wouldn't be taking 28 out of the top 32 slots of every fucking YCS it entered.
You can play Flu, you can play Exo, you can main deck Shifter. There is a lot of different ways that you could play into tier. Now, not saying that it was really objectively bad if you weren't playing tier into tier, but at the same time, you had a chance. And I think that's something that we really overlook in a lot of the older formats like Pepe and Goki, where you didn't have a chance, right? Like, you played against these decks, you went second, you lost at IRL, I'm sorry, you lost. And there's this new quantifier as to what tier 0 is, and that's realistically like 30 out of 32 slots at a big event that you are now quantified as a tier 0 deck, which is definitely interesting. But looking back, I feel like these were so obnoxious where if you played against like D-Ruler, I don't even feel like that was that bad. Playing against Zoo, I thought the mirror matches were really skillful.
Have you heard of
like,
D-Barrier?
Crazy. Even like tier, I know a lot of people disagree, but I feel like if you had a really big issue with tier, you probably just didn't play tier, which is totally understandable. But at the same time, another reason why I thought this format was really nice was this is probably one of the cheapest tier 0 decks we ever had.
Okay, I don't know if a deck being cheap necessitates the fact that the deck was healthy for the game. Sure, man. Sure. He mentioned the fact that, like, if you didn't play Tearlament format, you probably didn't like tier. Yeah, no shit. Nobody wants to be forced to play a deck. Nobody wants to be forced to fucking auto-pick J4 or Xin Zhao jungle or get fucking flamed by their teammates. No one wants to be forced to pick fucking Tearlament or Rescue Ace Wanted or Fire King Wanted in order to have any semblance of, like, a realistic chance at winning events. Like, nobody likes that. Nobody likes having the choice of option being taken away from them. I played tier 0 with tier and I wanted to drink a gallon of table salt. Exactly. Unless you genuinely liked having matches last 50 fucking minutes and having your brain turn into fucking sludge, then I'm sorry. This was just not a fun, enjoyable format for most players.
Like 90s to 100s, but that was pretty much the whole cost for the most part. Like, even the entire Mama engine wasn't expensive. The Kelbecks, I think, were like $10 a piece or so, but like not really super crazy. So overall, I thought that the deck was really nice to have in the game, not only just for the really skillful mirror matches that you got into, because at that point, like, you don't always just lose to Dwellered. I feel like that's the first thing that pops in everyone's mind. It's like, well, what happens if you get Dwellered? There's been multiple times on stream in mirror matches where someone gets Dwellered and wins the game. And it's just the way that you play the deck, the way that you can interact. And I think all that really does matter.
The fact that he's like, yes, you can play Bisteals, or you can play shifter decks, like he mentioned earlier. And then he mentions the fact that another silver bullet, like Dweller, sometimes just doesn't even matter, or only matters like maybe half the time. That should just tell you everything you needed to know about how fucking obnoxious tier was. Because it was either you made Dweller and like you just won on the spot because Lamau Floodgate, or B, you just didn't care because you fucking Bistealed them, you beat over Dweller, and you just played on your opponent's turn. It was so fucking stupid. Wasn't Magnum at like $15 a copy? You know what else is $15 a copy? Druis Worm, right fucking now.
There wasn't a whole lot of interacting going on. It was you setting your hand down, watching your opponent do the combo, hoping they mess up, and if they don't, you lose.
But what if I drew an Ash Blossom? What if I drew Ghost Spell for a
rematch? The good with the bad, and I think that having these types of formats, I completely get it. Like, these types of formats are awful. You cannot do anything except play this one deck. Not fun, right? Like, these are just uninteractable. I think that if you have a deck like Tier, where there was other options, you could go second, there's a slew of things that you could side or just main deck to deal with this, I think that that's a bit better. I do like these in general, though, just the one deck formats personally. I think that they're really something that comes down to technical play, and it's not just something that comes from variance.
If you want to play a fucking mirror match like 500 times in a row, you might as well just play fucking chess. Do not remind me of the chess video. If you wanted to play a fucking mirror match, then you might as well, yeah, just like go play Dragon Ruler format. Go play a fucking Goki format. Go back to playing fucking Goki Dark Warrior format. If you wanted to have a mirror match where there's technically technical play. You want to talk about technical play? Oh, why not just play fucking 15 hand traps? Why not just play like 15 hand traps plus engine so that like you have to play this weird mirror where like, oh, what do I do if I get trolled or Ash Blossomed on my Goki Super X search or anything like that? Ah, yes, I love the 4 flavors of shifter I had to deal with in tier format. Mirror matches are inherently just uncool because you're not really even playing Yu-Gi-Oh at that point. You're just doing this weird race to the bottom of like who can stack each other a little bit harder.
About that in a little bit. The other thing too is I actually made another slide here about the fact that narrow formats are really easy to join the game in, or at least easier. So if you're trying to teach someone how to play, it's not like they're coming in and having to learn 30 decks all at once. It's here are the best 3 decks that you have to worry about. Then you can kind of context clue your way into the other matchups that you play against because you already know how the best decks work at the time. So therefore, you should be able to understand how the other decks work as well. And I think this is a really important factor, at least for me, whenever I'm trying to like coach or teach. You always get in these conversations about, well, there's 100 different decks, what do I play? And then you get into the other conversation of, I only have 15 side deck cards. How do I mitigate this situation? And this actually cost me a top 8 at a regional because when you're looking at a competitive event, if there's too many decks to side for, you have to do what we call making a concession. And that's, I'm just not going to side this type of card because I don't have room for it, and quite frankly, I'm more worried about other things.
Madge, I can't play a deck that automatically beats every single deck. That is literally what he's fucking saying right now. He's literally saying, I am mad that I did not get top 8 at a regional because I couldn't put in answers for every deck in the format. Do you know how fucking stupid that would be? You know how fucking silly that would be? You know how silly that is to say? Imagine League being upset that your champion doesn't literally beat every other champion and that you can't build more than like 6 items. Madge, I can't build fucking Hex Drinker and Zanya's. Like the fucking shit. That's just the nature of games. It's just the nature of like life. I like wide formats because they don't make you think about, oh, I'm just gonna put in like 12 to 15 cards for the best deck and then just be like, c'est la vie. Wide formats force you to think about what your deck actively does versus other decks and how you can mitigate your bad matchups. Like let's say in Labyrinth, I have a really bad Fire King matchup. I'm gonna put in way more cards for Fire King, but I'm not gonna put in fucking cross out designators or royal decrees just so I have a marginally better like Labyrinth matchup or stun matchup. You know what I mean?
And that was a format where backer removal just wasn't real. Like nobody really played it. And I didn't play it, and my one loss at the end of the tournament was to just a back row deck, and it was unfortunate.
Good. Labyrinth
reigns
reigns supreme.
Built to beat the rest of the room, as there was more combo than there was control, but it was still such a wide meta that I couldn't really do a whole lot with the side.
Okay, maybe you should have considered before you entered that regional, hey, my deck has a significantly worse matchup into back row decks. Maybe instead of siding 12 to 15 cards for the general metagame, maybe I could side 9 to 12 and maybe leave 3 for this specific matchup, being that this matchup exists within the metagame. But nope, I just want to put in 15 hand traps and just say this will get me there. And like if I lose against the fucking Labyrinth matchup, then I will just cry about it on a video. Again, I'm being a fucking certified hater. I'm not fucking dunking on yugioh or anything. I just hate people who defend formats that are extremely narrow. I'm just a hater. I'll say it.
So I think that's one thing that is really frustrating to a lot of players too, where people want these like crazy diverse metas, but at the same time, when it comes down to like just playing the game, and then you figure out that you don't have enough slots, and you start running into random matchups, it's not the best. Because when you go to an event and you're spending a lot of time, you really want to make sure that you have the most optimal list as possible.
Okay, you want to play the most optimal list as possible. Why are you losing to other decks? Simple. If you're playing the most optimal deck and the most optimal list, then theoretically, you just should not be losing to other decks. Simple. Why are you losing? Why are you playing Tearlament and losing to fucking, I don't know, Orcus? You know what I mean? Why are you playing fucking Sky Striker and losing to like Ren Maju? You could say like, oh, I just didn't draw well. Well, it fucking sucks to be you. What if you didn't draw well versus Thunder Dragon? You could say that about any matchup ever. Like theoretically, if you're playing like objectively the best deck in a format, then you should not be complaining about losing to lower tier decks, because guess what? Maybe you just didn't play that well in that specific game.
A lot of is the competitive pro players are just really lazy and they don't want to learn a wide meta. That could not be more incorrect than anything I've ever heard my entire life. I feel like if you're really competitive and you're studying the game, one thing that you're not going to do is just quit when there's an open meta. You're just not going to do that. We are going to say that it's really not a great format overall because there's too much to worry about. At that point, it becomes way more variance than skill. And that's where I talk about variance does not equal skill. If we're going down to like a triangle format, for example, I love triangle formats. I think they're very fun. One deck beats the next deck, that deck beats the next deck, and you just have this really cool situation where usually all those decks play objectively different, and that's why they beat each other. So there's a variety of options that you can choose from, and the different techs that you can play are usually very limited.
Different techs. Do you know what the fucking techs were back then? Salamangreat. 3 floodgates, floodgate, fucking sacky ass board breaker, fucking 9 floodgates in the side deck. Sky Striker. Let's take a look. Floodgate, sacky ass board breaker, floodgate, floodgate, floodgate. Let's take a look at fucking Thunder Dragon. Floodgate, sacky board breaker, floodgate, floodgate. Spoiler alerts to anyone who fucking thought that these formats are cool. End of the fucking day, they all end up being floodgate formats because turns out floodgates are really fucking good. Oh, maybe I could put in shared ride and it'll be really good versus the Sky Striker matchup. Nah, bro, we're putting in rivalry, baby. You want to talk about fucking technical play? Sure. Just don't pretend that at the end of the day, like these formats, much like a lot of other formats, basically devolved into people figuring out, yeah, we're just gonna play floodgates because turns out that those are the best things that we can be playing at any given point in time.
Play because you have to learn how to beat your bad matchup, and a lot of times that's catering your main deck to beat your bad matchup because your other matchup is already free. So that's like Striker and Orchest, very free matchup, and then you have Dingirsu to send like a Thunder Dragon, very solid, or you just pass on Colossus and stare at Striker, right? So definitely a lot of very interesting things that were coming up in the format.
Are you really gonna talk about like the Striker versus Thunder Dragon matchup was skillful? Fuck no, that shit wasn't skillful at all. It was just better hard open Ray, or better hard open a way to get to Ray, or better hard open Widow Anchor in order to beat fucking double Colossus. Otherwise, you were just fucking fried. There was just nothing you could do half the time versus fucking Thunder Dragon. Until, you know, people figured out Striker Orchest, but that's a different story.
But I do think that it is really important to note that variance does not equal skill. If you lose to a super crazy random deck just because there's so many decks in the format, is that really something that you could have prepared for? Probably not. But if it goes down to a format where you're actually having the ability to study a format, because I feel like this wide meta that we're in right now, this isn't even a format, it's just a free-for-all. And that's something that I don't think is very good for the competitive side of the game at all. And that's one thing where when there's like 30 decks, you can't simply prepare for everything. You can. And if you say you can, you're capping. Like, it won't work.
Good. Genuinely, you should not be able to prepare for literally everything. I think that's really stupid, and being able to prepare for literally anything is like a flaw within your game's design, because that just means like, oh, now everyone is literally pigeonholed into doing this one exact thing, or you're fucked. That's dumb. You should not just be able to prepare for everything. And like, if you're gonna say like, oh, but being able to prepare for everything results in technical skill, sure. Like, you know what also revolves around fucking technical skill? Building a rocket. But no one's gonna say building a rocket is fun, enjoyable gameplay, you know what I mean?
Important to note, like, if you are going into a competitive event, you want to do well, you're spending the money to travel, and you're really confident with your deck list, how would you feel if you sat down and played against like 9 different decks for the day?
It'd be awesome!
You lose your mind because your whole deck was ready for a specific meta, and all of a sudden you're just playing against the variety pack, right? And that's just not something that anyone wants to do. I think that it's really important to note too that when it comes to deck building, I think that it's such an amazing thing to just sit down and do. I love deck building so much, but I feel like I lose a piece of that when I'm in a very diverse meta. And feel free to leave any of your comments down below and argue your point as well. Again, keep it respectful because this is a conversation that we're having about the card game that we all love. I'm just going to start deleting comments if it gets really toxic or nasty. It's just how it is. And, you know, we do see those types of comments, but at the same time, we can be constructive and we can talk about this because I feel like this is on everyone's mind. And that's why I'm making this video. My tweet blew up about this, so I figured that it was about time to actually sit down and have a chat. I do think, however, though, that these types of formats and being the triangle or even the top 5 decks just benefit the game as a whole, because you can always play anything that you want to play, but if you want to really do well, pick one of the 5 and then go into the tournament and do well. And that's one thing too, where you kind of get a broader idea of like what a meta is. And if you're teaching someone the game, they can understand how to play in a meta, which is really important. Whereas if someone were to join right now and they're like, what do I do? I'd be like, do what you want, you know, like do whatever you want. And I don't think that that's ever going to be healthy for a competitive scene ever. Now, the last thing that I heard a lot about, just so many comments about this, was siding silver bullets. Now, the number one argument, and I think the weakest argument possible, is why do you enjoy formats that you can just go, hey, I sided the silver bullet, you lose? But that's not even how the game is.
I mean, it kind of is. Again, you want to talk about your fucking favorite format? Oh my god, he was just fucking meaning there could be only one. Like, yeah, you want to talk about fucking silver bullets? Spoiler alerts. And you want to talk about like, oh, well, silver bullets, you don't actually lose the game on the spot. Literally earlier, you were just talking about how fucking Dweller just auto-beat Tier. Now you're gonna talk about where, oh, well, actually, Tearlament doesn't actually lose to Dweller. And when it turns out, like, spoilers, people are playing these fucking cards because they're fucking floodgates that just win you the game on the spot. It's fucking insane.
You can side a silver bullet for a matchup, sure. Like in Snake Eye format, we're all siding Soul Release because we all know it's a very good card. But at the same time, it's not gonna end the game.
It very much does end the game. Tell me, what is Salamangreat supposed to do once you just fucking flip up there can be only one? Tell me, what was like Ultra Guy supposed to do when you just normal summoned Denko Sekka? Like, of fucking course these cards win the game when you play them. We wouldn't be playing them otherwise.
Oh, the anti-spell is really popular. They're changing their L-Storms to Cosmics. So like if a lot of people are on Soul Release, a lot of people are already on Bell, so they're just going to be having Bell in their deck when they're going first. So if they get Soul Release, they can just Bell. And I think that's one thing where siding silver bullets isn't really that crazy when you play competitively and you know how to counter the known bullets that people are siding, right? So I think that this is another one that has come up quite often that I think is just really misconstrued. Like, yeah, even right now, like if you side Shifter, you're siding a silver bullet into like 25 to 30 decks that we're playing. Does that mean that it's a crazy enough meta because you're siding silver bullets? It doesn't matter what meta you're in. You're siding a silver bullet for something, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's a narrow format, if it's a wide format, like, doesn't matter. If you're playing
okay,
Ash
so why are we
main
complaining?
deck, it's the same thing as being like, oh, I destroy Branded if I Ash them, right? Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense to me to say that like a format is decided by silver bullets on the side. It doesn't make sense.
Anyways, I did not enjoy that video. I'm sorry, but I will leave a dislike. I did not enjoy this video very much. yugioh is very much coming from, I find Tearlament as the greatest format in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think he's just coming from an extremely biased era of Yu-Gi-Oh's history. I just think me and a lot of other people just do not find overall enjoyable. Anyways, that's just my thoughts. Again, I'm just being a hater. Don't attack anyone. I just hate Tearlament format. I literally quit Yu-Gi-Oh! During that period of time. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and goodbye forever.